yeah, then there's Agnes. You know, what Kevish is fighting against in this ever-impenetrable war. That is what is stopping Melia from achieving this goal. When she wants to stop chaos from forming, Agnes still has her own secret up their sleeve. But we'll get to that in the next video.
Come here! I got something for you!
You've got a real death wish.
I felt her thoughts. There were so many. How are you inside me?
All orders are rescinded.
Payback for Nimue dying with her wish unfulfilled. But all the techniques I can use with it are flashing before my eyes.
You kids, and you alone.
Finding a path that lets us all live. I will make that my mission.
Sorry, Nia. Maybe another day. Hey guys, Luxker here. Holy mother of Tetsuya Takahashi! We got a buttload of news for this month. I mean, we aren't talking about just gameplay here. We are talking about locations, new character information, the battle system, just so much stuff. All coming very soon at the end of July. I already made a rough analysis of this trailer, which you can check it out right here. But basically, I knew very little information about this trailer until more news broke out within the past month. And we are all going to cover it all today in the third part of the Xenoblade 3 monthly updates. However, unlike the previous updates where I look at a week's worth of tweets and talk about them more in depth, I'm going to split this all into 3 parts. The first is talking about locations we got a good look at so far, then the gameplay, which includes the battle system, what you can do outside of battle, and some miscellaneous things. Finally, going more in depth on the characters and their relationship with the new party members. As usual, spoilers for Xenoblade 1 and 2, although I'm mostly going to talk about environmental similarities and a theory I thought of about a certain area that has gnosis and fog elements in it. But be warned, as near the end of the video, I'll be talking more in depth about potential story elements in Xenoblade 3 regarding the characters we know so far. Also, if you like these updates and want to get notified when the last update comes out next month, please subscribe and hit that bell icon, as well as like and comment on this video. With that said, let's go! Throughout the past month, we've seen a better look at what to expect from going from place to place, and the exploration elements in Xenoblade 3. A lot of what we have seen so far is a combination of areas we've seen from Xenoblade 1 and 2. I find that very fascinating, considering the two nations are literally just Xenoblade 1's world versus Xenoblade 2's world. Not that they are all connected like this, it breathes more life to the world our main characters live in. Our first area that we go around is called Milk Meadows, a vast inviting grassland with a flowing river right in the middle of it. There are many things that we can point to the previous games from the images shown off in the tweets, such as a guidepost and arches like the ones you find on Bionis Lake, as well as having part of a tie-in from Xenoblade 2, probably parts of Araya or Gembu, combining to make the nearby waterfall, where both nations have a lot of groundwater to have a river going right through it. Enemies that can be found here are Armus and Ardans, Flamies, Rogals, Ferris, Brogs, Blants, Crustips, and the upper regions, Kevesh troopers and their artillery called Equites, name coming from the cavalry of ancient Rome and coming from the Latin word for horse, and the Flying Agnes military called Avis, Latin for bird, and freaking territorial Rothbard! Yup, the grade level 81 monk is back ready to take down any passing by. Milk Meadows actually appears in a much bigger region called the Aitia region. Aitia comes from the Greek poem by the poet Callimachus, which presents a large collection of origin myths. Even Aitia is roughly translated as origins. So this basically means that Milk Meadows, along with other locations within that region, were once one of the first places in Ionios to be created. The next region is called Aegis Wilderness, a desert region that often gets sandstorms, making things difficult to traverse. While having an oasis, although we can't really find it in screenshots or in any gameplay videos, it also has a lot of plant life despite it being a freaking desert, although they may have adapted to the harsh conditions. We also see a rail going across the path and some kind of icy-like waterfall in the distance that may be an ether crystal deposit. Some familiar landmarks are the fingers from the fallen arm, which we saw Noah run on in the first trailer, and a tombstone like the ones unique monsters had when you defeat them in Xenoblade 2. We'll get to those later. The enemies found here are Volfs, Taus, Robles, Camille's, Aspars, and a brand new type of enemy with what looks to have ether crystals growing all around it. The only location that we know of so far is called Rashin's Platter, which is where this new monster is located at, as we see in our gameplay section. Rashin is an interesting name for this location, because when you translate it from French to English, it's the word for root. So my guess, going by the name, it's the central part of Aegis Wilderness, while also being long and flat, like a plate. Also, shoutouts to that someone living in Racine, Wisconsin. I hope your town feels special for being a location name in a Xenoblade game. The next area is called the Great Cot Falls, one of the water-filled regions featuring many waterfalls and a bigger waterfall in the center of it. The Japanese Twitter account mentions the Iron Giant located here, called Colony Lambda, led by the Agnian forces, showing that this territory is part of Agnes. It mentions that a big battle is going to come here, and I feel like this is where Mio refers the clock on Colony Lambda as the Flame Clock, and it must go. We still don't know much about what this means yet, but it'll probably be coming down the line. Some interesting features are these flowers that live on top of the water. We don't know if they're going to be harmful when you touch them, or a brand new enemy type we don't know of just yet. We also see a screenshot of what looks to be an abandoned building with a platform jutting from it. Right next to it is a purple wall that is climbable, but not climbable at the same time. More on that in the gameplay section. The enemies that can be found here so far are Flamies, Piranax, Hoxes, and Rogals. Finally, the last area on our list is called the Maktha Wildwood. Surprise, surprise! This area has a lot of influence from the name is based on, from the lush jungle of Maktha Forest from Xenoblade 1, and the city of Maktha that was under the Cloud Sea since the dawn of time in Xenoblade 2. This is perhaps the most interesting looking area we've seen so far because of the combination of broken down buildings over a lush jungle. We can also see a rail that the players can go across from building to building. The fruit that can be found here are regarded as a delicacy, and you can even pick them to use as ingredients. Again, more on that later. The enemies that inhabit this area are Quadwings, Rogals, Tirkins, Aspars, and Anlids. What I find interesting though is perhaps some kind of story reason why Maktha Forest and Maktha would come together like this. In Maktha, the Goldos that reside here bear an interesting connection to the Fog King in general, which the Fog King from Future Connected literally uses a similar model to the Infernal Goldo. Goldos were originally humans who attempted to replace their brain cells with core crystals to become immortal, which ended up corrupting their bodies, transferring them into a monster. I believe that Goldos, like Maktha themselves, have escaped the confines of the Cloud Sea and entered the jungle gaining new abilities from their environment. At the same time, a video clip shows some ruins in the background. I believe this to be the ruins of King Agni's tomb that resided in Maktha Forest, which, if you recall, holds the Eater records that make Shulk learn Monado Eater, and when you happen to use Monado Eater, a thick wave of fog comes out of the Monado. Why is this? Well, it's going to take a bit to explain, but basically, the name Agni comes from the Hindu god of fire, who in a legend, Kandava Daha Parva, consumed an entire forest for the sake of gratification. Notice the word, consume. This is where the Eater records come from. Connecting back to Agni, in ancient Jain thought, living beings have souls and exist in multiple realms. One of these are known as Agni bodies, and these are believed to contain soul and fire-bodied beings. The fire-bodied beings can relate to the Fog King or Fog Beasts, because not only do they have black particles coming out of their bodies, but smoking almost burning like fog enveloping their bodies as well. These can include the Goldos, because they are a living being who existed and passed through many realms until existing in Maktha Wildlands, right by where Agni's tomb is located. Coincidence? I think not. Okay, this could be just me cherry-picking evidence, but it would be nice explaining something about what the true nature of the enemy is. With Fog Beasts and Fog Kings returning, what the Ouroboros forms could lead down a path towards, so on and so forth.
Let's go!
Come here! I got something for you!
Man, I took way too long on the location section. Now let's check out more of the gameplay, starting with the battle system. The latest trailer showed off what battles are going to be like, with an emphasis on the class system, separated by attackers, defenders, and healers. Also, can we acknowledge how adorable this Chibi art is for a moment? It even led to so much fan art of people having their OCs, other Xeno characters, or characters in other video games in general to be in the style of these Chibi characters. Long hair Melia included, by the way. Anyways, the whole point of the class system is to have everyone become a role however they want to, whether you want to make no one an attacker or a defender. You can also have the characters swap weapons and outfits, which don't depend on their class, and have multiple characters carry the same weapons during battle. These weapons are called blades, by the way. Great name. It's interesting to see these combinations, but what's important are the arts each class uses. For instance, Noah's attacker class is a sword fighter, who is good at taking positions around the enemy and attacking. Some of his arts include Sword Strike, which does greater damage to enemies from the side, and putting the break status on an enemy, and Edge Thrust, which deals more damage from behind the enemy. More attacks include Ground Beat, which is an area of effect attack, Air Slash, which increases damage when it is cancelled after an auto attack, and his talent art called Overclock Buster, which increases damage on dazed enemies. This is Noah's talent art, because we've seen him in gameplay clips that the talent art charges up after using arts and landing the special effect on the arts. Although his regular arts seem to be based on how much time happened after using them, compared to Mio's arts which charge up after auto attacking. Going on to Mio, her defender class is considered an evader, and focuses on gaining aggro and evasion. The arts she uses are Air Fang, which has increased attack when aggroed, Wide Slash, which increases her evasion, and Butterfly Blade, which attracts a lot of aggro. Her talent art is Gemini Strike, which attracts high amounts of aggro and evades at the same time. A very good talent art for an agility tank. Our next defender is Lans, who is considered a heavy guard, and just like his name implies, he uses a heavy sword to attack, which has given him very slow animations when he performs his arts, which are Upper Slash, an attack that increases his aggro, Crash Out, an AoE attack that also increases his aggro, and Heavy Charge, which topples an enemy after they have the break status. His talent art, like another tanky character from another Xenoblade game, is Mad Taunt, which drives all aggro of every enemy onto him. In another battle, we see Lans become a sword fighter and don the almighty protagonist Strip, and have him use Noah's arts and talent art as well, all doing pretty much the same thing. Our next attacker class is Sena. Considered a crusher, she uses the hammers for some nice blowdown damage. Her first art is Hammerhead, which increases damage from the side, and Giant Swing, which inflicts knockback on the enemy, while Big Impact inflicts blowdown, a nice stunning art for a short time, which can only be performed in front of the enemy. Her talent art is Pressure Drop, which launches an enemy after they are toppled. Yes, for the first time, you can use Dazed or Launch after an enemy is toppled, which opens many possibilities in doing a lot of damage to enemies, and what the best tactics are to face them. I find this very cool that the developers incorporated both elements during combat. In another clip, we see Noah become a crusher, while also using the same arts as Sena, except his talent art is called Infinity Blade instead, which is an AoE attack and pierces through enemy defenses, which is also very good. Next up are the healer class of characters, which the Xenoblade Twitter account seems to have put really good importance on for good reason, as they are the only class to heal and revive enemies when they are incapacitated, negating on the use of the talent gauge from previous games. This is a very nice addition, because healers in both 1 and 2, especially in 2, weren't all that helpful most of the time. Now, it's important to have a healer in the party so they can keep the battles going. Our first healer is Uni, who is classified as a medic gunner. Her most important art that the Twitter account highlighted a lot is Group Heal, which shields the entire party within the range of a blue circle around her. Another art she has is a support move, Power Ring, a field-wide move that increases attack power on the whole party within a green circle. Her last art is Myopic Screen, which inflicts daze upon Topple, which helps Noah's talent art become more powerful. Her talent art is Healing Ring, a field-wide move that has a regeneration effect on the whole party within a green circle. Her moves are very supportive, and her arts charge very fast even though she has circle arts. Our last healer is Tyon, classified as a tactician. He is more of a supporter compared to Uni, and his arts reflect on them too. His first art is called Dark Banner, an AoE attack that puts enemies to sleep, Tetsu style, a range recovery move similar to Uni's, and Foggy Shadow, a field move that increases the party's evasion within a green circle. His talent art is 500 Waves, which is an AoE attack and a recovery at the same time for party members, which is a very nice talent art. That's everyone's arts, but there are still a few more to go over. The left-hand palette shows the interlink symbol that I've talked about before during my first trailer analysis, but I didn't know what the other arts represented because they aren't part of the character's respective class. It seems like you can team up with someone else from another side to be able to use arts opposite of the player's side. For instance, Noah as a sword fighter can use Mio's evasion arts because Noah's arts are circles and Mio's is diamonds. Same thing goes when Noah is a crusher having diamond arts and paired with Lons, who has circle arts, making a nice mix of having arts that you can auto-attack into charge up, and arts that have a cooldown timer. Some arts we know the characters use are Mio's Glow Ring, which inflicts the target with a target lock status, Tyon's Overfall, which lowers ether defense on enemies, Seina's Maximum Voltage, an unblockable attack that raises the attack power after it's been used, Lance's Hidden Thorn, which inflicts bleed on an enemy, and Uni's Ether Cannon, which lowers the enemy's accuracy. It's incredibly obvious by now, but I want to make it very clear. The Kevesh characters use circle arts, which the Agnes characters use diamond arts, which represent the style of combat from the games they come from. This has caused quite the concern for the Xenoblade community, as the Kevesh characters are basically restricted by a cooldown timer that you must wait to charge it up all the way, whereas the Agnes characters can just plainly auto-attack and arts charge up just fine. This has caused quite the uproar for the community because it either makes one side better than the other because of the differences in cooldown, and it won't be balanced enough to make the battle system fun. But I'll just say this, we need to wait a little bit longer to know why cooldowns are like this, and if there are more things to be mitigated here. Sure, it might ruin the battle system, but it's just too early to say that as we still don't know very much about the battles in general. Some other things you can do in battle is a quick dodge that allows you to reposition to the side of the enemy, or in front of a fallen ally to revive them. You can't attack during a quick move because your weapon is temporarily withdrawn. The fact you can run away from a battle if you don't want to fight an enemy. Running away is a valid tactic after all, and luring enemies to get them away from other nearby enemies, as shown with this unique monster with that awesome battle music in the background. Speaking of unique monsters, enemies are separated into categories based on the icon located next to their health bar. An icon that shows nothing represents a normal monster, a blue wing icon represents an elite monster, the shimmer around their name shows that they are a lucky monster, and the orange wings show the enemy as a unique monster. The main differences between elite and unique monsters are that elite monsters are just more stronger enemies in general, where unique monsters are special because they have an adjective and a name associated with them. Lucky monsters seem to possess the same strength as normal ones, but they make attaining rare items much easier. My guess is that they seem to be very rare, so it's very important to keep track of them on your journey. One last enemy type not mentioned are what are presumed to be story boss fights, represented by the red wing symbols in this clip. Also, something interesting I found comparing the story bosses to the unique monsters is this red flame in the middle of their health bar, possibly representing the next phase of the battle with a crazed or awakening status. Going into the gameplay outside of battles now, finally. Outside of battle, you can swap party members on the fly like Torn of the Golden Country, and all the 6 party members have this little quip they say when they are controlled by the player, which is pretty nice.
I'll do my best.
Come on, who else?
I'll handle this. I'm your guy.
You want me to lead?
A later version of this tweet is in a later build of the game, which is more noticeable if you look at the grass compared to the previous version, where it just disappears when you walk through it. The tombstones make a return from Xenoblade 2, and they seem to behave just like how it was in that game, restoring unique monsters so you can fight them over and over. And during unique monster fights, there's a timer that gets displayed over how fast you can take down an enemy, and those tombstones will have the same ability in 3. Field skills are making a return in this game. Okay, calm down everyone. Field skills aren't going to require gacha like in Xenoblade 2. You actually learn them from various NPCs all over the world, either from the side quests or by meeting required story elements. The skills you can have are rail grinding or climbing these purple walls we saw in the Great Cot Falls. The map screen is very interesting, as it takes Xenoblade 1's approach at filling out the map on your own, instead of 2 where the map is already right in front of you. You can also change through the intervals instead of a specific hour, which I find to be a very nice addition in general, because it will help with locating something like a side quest or a specific enemy that comes out at a certain time of day. There's locations and hidden locations you can skip travel to, as well as a spiral shape with a star in the middle of it. I don't know what this is quite yet, but it could probably be a location the player marks on the map, which you can do in this game. And finally, one of the last main things related to gameplay are rest sites, which are found sporadically around the world of Ionios. It is possible that one can skip travel to these rest sites, and we can see on the map that these rest sites are somewhere in the Aitia region, more specifically located at the Alphet Valley, at a place called the Berger Zone. The icon representing the rest sites reminds me of the heart-to-hearts from the previous games, and I just don't know how to feel about that. I of course want more deep interactivity with the characters, but I want them to be in specific locations, and not where there's a campfire. Some of the main things you can do at the rest areas are talking by the campfire similar to Torn of the Golden Country. The barbell icon could mean leveling up arts or stats by training or exercising. The gem icon where you can do something like item crafting by the Nappan character named Riku, but we'll get to him in the character section. This instance of item crafting could mean that Ether Gem or Ox Core crafting are in this game, and probably be used to make stuff for the party to grow stronger. We have seen what looks to be an Ether Crystal deposit in the Aegis Wilderness, so we'll likely see gem crafting similar to how Xenoblade 1 uses it. And the pot icon showing this is where you'll be cooking. Yes, cooking among other crafting shenanigans from Xenoblade 2 make a return here. As we know, we can pick fruits off the trees in Maktha Wildwood, and cook them as ingredients to make dishes out of them. Then, if the player uses a dish as a pouch item, a fork and knife icon will show up under the location HUD, showing that you are using the dishes to increase stats. However, cooking works differently in this game, as it is based on what equipment you have available at the time. Some of the buffs you can get from cooking include temporarily gaining more experience points and class experience, along with more benefits. Then sometimes when you eat at rest points with dining areas, Manana, a chef Nappan will get more into later, will learn new dishes after making a meal. Also, gotta love the placement of this text box in the screenshot. Gotta love not showing more uni cleavage.
There you are! You monsters!
Finally, we can talk about the characters, which seem to be the mostly antagonists shown off, minus one of them. There's plenty of interesting stuff that was shown off in the trailer about these characters, such as their past with the main characters, and the duties they must partake in to stop the Ouroboros, the looming threat that has caught the attention of Agnes and Kevesh. while one character seems to think the will of Ouroboros is what will stop this endless war. Our first character is someone we've seen and theorized very well from the first trailer, and that's Guernica Vandom. That's right, it's Vandom. Not an Olerex or Zeke, it's this game's Vandom. The Guernica part of his name is a reference to the famous Pablo Picasso painting that symbolizes the struggles of chaos and violence, which I find relevant to this version of Vandom, because compared to the other ones, Vandom is here to find ways to stop war from occurring, as he appears right when Noah and Mio fight amongst one another. I also have a sneaking suspicion Vandom is going to die sometime after they meet him. It's par for the course for the Van characters anyways. Next up is a character with a lot of intrigue. He looks to have a wild side to him. Or a wild ride, as the fans seem to call him. Wild Ride appears first in the second trailer, holding both a Kavesh and Agnes soldier appearing dead in its hands. The tweet mentions that Wild Ride has immense power, and appears before Noah and Mio, wanting a death wish, before jumping in the air and shooting a beam at the group. We don't have a good idea who Wild Ride is, but looking at some clues throughout the trailer, we can have a good idea. First, Uni and Tyon's Ouroboros form as a talent art, which increases damage against Mobius, an enemy type we haven't seen before. The core on his chest has a different pattern to the one on Ouroboros, an infinity symbol, otherwise known as a Mobius strip, which is more of a physical form of eternity, where an Ouroboros is a spiritual form. Both mean the same thing though. Wild Ride also alludes to the passage of fate, which is an important point of the story in Xenoblade 1. How everyone shares the same destiny as Sansa. In my last update video, I talked about how the Ouroboros to Xenoblade represents the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. A Mobius strip doesn't represent this, however, but it's a mathematical way of finding the topological principle of the line at infinity, found by the projective duality of each side of the strip becoming equivalent to each other. Duality. Where have I heard that word from before? Oh yeah, the two warring nations are attacking each other, Takahashi, crazy lunatic! This is probably what the passage of fate here is referring to, that because of the duality between the two nations, causes the characters to transform into an Ouroboros form to share a common destiny with one another, all on an imaginary line of infinity. I go into what Wild Ride could be in this video right here, because out of all the characters shown off in this trailer, I find Wild Ride the most interesting. He could be part of the Fog, Logos, Alvis, a Berserk Ouroboros, or something else we have yet to know entirely. From what we can glean on it though, Wild Ride is a very powerful Mobius-type enemy. Our next character is Ethel, a commander of the Kavesh Colony 4. Also more waifu material in Xenoblade because check her out! She wields a pair of Sunder swords, and famous for defeating 3 enemy colonies at once with just 100 soldiers under her. Damn girl, she can just step on you anytime with that. She is called Silvercoat Ethel, who is known throughout all the forces of Kavesh, although fans just call her how Japan calls her, Silver Ethel, because it makes her even more badass. Ethel is very straightforward in her beliefs, and is well trusted by her soldiers. Although it seems the red in her eyes is making her behave very strangely, and calls Noah a monster, even though he's a Kavesh soldier. Her point of view shows that Noah's group is enveloped by this foggy substance. In any case, why would Ethel attack Noah? Noah seems to be in good terms with Ethel before this, and even saved him and his friends from an Agnian attacker when they were children. Even they looked up to her. Notice the difference between younger Ethel and the one we see now? I'll give you a few seconds. If you guessed the tattoo on her chest being different, then you are correct. It's more red than her adult version, which is close to being gray. People have theorized this tattoo to be the lifespan of an Ionia soldier, and while I do believe this theory myself, we haven't seen much of Mio's tattoo yet, and we know from the trailer that she is very close to losing her life. Wait, losing lives just from joining an army for a long time? And the tattoos having loads to do with that? We'll get to that later. Also, we see Ethel with short hair. Never mind, I like adult Ethel better because long hair. In any case, Ethel seems to be a very interesting character, and I can't wait to see more of what her slicing brings to the future. Our next character is Kamaravi, a spear-wielding warrior and commander of Agnes's colony Delta. He's a mighty general who values respect in combat, and his fiery passion in battle has given him the name Smoldering Kamaravi, instead of Crimson Fist Kamaravi, as Japan gave him. Man, Western localization makes things worse sometimes. Despite this weird naming convention, he's very honorable and strives for a very hot victory, and always wanted to pay homage to Kevesh, playing everything very fairly by showing his respect. It's very obvious by now that Kamaravi is a blade. I mean, just look at him. Glowing hair, fire coming right out of his armor, a Mega Lance user? Speaking of that spear, the shape of the flame reminds me a bit of the true Aegis sword when it's fully powered up. Don't know if it's a coincidence, but I thought it would be nice to point out. Our next characters we get to know more about are Riku and Monado, who form a duo and is one of the aforementioned special allies, called Heroes, that can be recruited to fill out the 7th member of the party. As shown in many screenshots and gameplay trailers, Riku is part of Kevesh Colony 9, which is the same colony that Noah and his childhood friends were from. The thick-browed Napon oversees item crafting and maintenance to the Iron Giants all across Ionios. Monado is an Agnes Napon who has a spot for cooking, seeing she wears a chef's hat. She cooks for Mio and her friends, and is apparently a skilled chef as she was once the head chef of one of her colonies at one point. Back to the Napon couple. They seem to work really well as a pair, and make up for each other's glaring flaws. A nice touch if you ask me, especially when we get to know each of them better. Will they be the ever-loving squishy characters like Ricky or Tora? We'll just have to see. Finally, our last character from the latest trailer is Iserd, a seasoned tactician and commander of Agnes's colony Lambda. Lying right by the Great Kot Falls, he used to be a mentor to Tyon and raised and trained him as a tactician, but now like Noah, Iserd greets Tyon as an enemy from that same redness in his eye, this time in his left eye. Like Kamaravi, Iserd is a blade because of the ether lines around his face. He wields dual tonfas, a rare weapon to use since freaking Sever, and he only uses one tonfa and has a scythe on it, where the dual tonfas are circular in its shape. To me, I believe Iserd as a flesh eater, because unlike Kamaravi, where he displays distinct features as a blade, Iserd looks old looking, especially if you look at his face, something blades don't have if they were transformed into a flesh eater, though I may be wrong on this. Going back to the tweets, he is honest and trusted by his soldiers, but never seems to forget his past, a which burdens him deeply. This could be referring to a character that we'll get to shortly, but I believe him looking up at the Agnean artillery when it's destroyed reminded him of that character. Okay, we are all done with these 3 main points, but I want to go back to the main trailer along with some possible leaked details and talk about things that are not in the Japanese Xenoblade Twitter account, or in any of Nintendo's Twitter accounts for that matter. I will give a slight spoiler warning to people who don't want to look at details relating to the story. It's the end of the video for you, but if you want to stick around for the rest, I'm all for it. An elite GameStop info dump of Xenoblade 3, released shortly after the second trailer, it talks about how that soldiers from the day they joined the war are on a time limit of 10 years. When that time is up, they can no longer live and die as a result. In fact, looking at how close to the end Mio's diary is, she joined the army of Agnes very young, and is very close to her death because of this 10-year ruling. Trailers in many places in her artwork explicitly don't show much of Mio's tattoo, which is located on the right side of her neck. I suspect the tattoo is literally almost grayed out with a small red dot in the center showing it about to disappear. Compared to other characters who have the same tattoo, they have much more life ahead of Mio, with maybe less than 10 years, unlike Ethel though, who we've seen herself battle from a young age like Mio, where the tattoo is blood red. to when she meets Noah and calls him a monster. Her tattoo is almost fully gray. Whether or not these tattoos are important to the story is not a coincidence. They basically determine how much life they all have. And at the end of their life, a character who we'll call Nimue, as Eastard says in the trailer, begins crystallization and dies as a result. This is probably the burden that Eastard feels, as he needed to figure out a way to save her. Although I'm not sure what Nimue's relationship to Eastard is yet. Some more things that have come from the trailer are these three characters. A green-haired Gormati character with a bow, a half-Homs half-Iantia character with very short brown wings named Xeon in the gameplay section, and a Machina girl with an attack robot named Valdi in the gameplay section. We don't know much about them right now, but they seem to act as the temporary 7th party member that can help you out in battle during various points of the story. Another scene we see is Kamaravi facing up against Ethel in what appears to be Titan-sized mechs. They appear to be clashing in a battle of all their might. Now, it may just be my Xenogear sense of me, but I really want to have battles in these mechs, and not just in cutscenes. Maybe the Ouroboros forms later in the game will turn gigantic and fight out these Titan-sized characters. That would be freaking amazing! Some other things that haven't made a reappearance yet are some locations, how swimming works in this game, how to use the boat, which is probably locked by a field skill, the spiraling fog in these couple of locations, and any instance of colonies in a specific location besides the one we know in the Great Cot Falls. Hopefully we'll get to know the full extent of those in the next update, as well as possibly knowing more about the Ouroboros forms, and what different types of item orbs we can expect from what they can do, as well as learn about side quests, more monster types, characters, and so much more. As always everyone, thank you for watching all the way through with these updates. I know you all were expecting a video talking about Nia, but right now, it isn't possible to do right now. Since I'm starting a new job very soon, and I just want some time to prepare for it. Although I will give a special shout out to Monado Rudra's video on Nia, as he went into great depths into knowing her character, and it's just a phenomenal video in general. So yeah, that's your Nia video I guess. Anyways everyone, next month is our final monthly update, and man, July 29th cannot come any sooner. Until next time everyone, see you on the other side!